Okay, today I'm going to try a video battle of Field of Battle 2nd Edition, as a lot of people have been requesting it. Not sure how well this will turn out. It's the first time using this iPad. As you can see, the game's set up for a 7 Years' War battle between Russians on this side and Prussians on this side. When I'm playing this game, I tend to use my own house rules for a lot of things, not because I dislike this particular set as it is, but I just, as we've played it over the years, like to tweak things just to their own satisfaction. So as you can see here, this is the standard QRS that comes with the game, which is fine. Yeah. However, I have made up my own 7 Years of War version, which basically just includes the things that we like. And then we have a small set of what I call house rules or optional rules, and really the main things are change some of the artillery stuff like that, give a support bonus if they can stay in lines, supporting lines in melee, just to give it a bit more 7 Years War supporting lines. As you can see here, the armies have been set out beforehand. This is the Prussian force, done with the point systems I'm going to use. Again, I'm not going to go into that for the purpose of the video, but you can see there's basically 4 brigades here. We have, so I can use this pointy stick, we have Frederick in charge, so he's got an exceptional deck. Field of Battle works off card system, which is basically these here. Each pip you get, you turn a card and it tells you what to do. Really quite simple. And rather than trying to explain it in the video, I'll just do it as we go along. Hopefully you'll pick it up. As you can see, they have 2 infantry brigades, each have 4 standard line infantry, 1 battery of guns and a grenadier, and then they have 2 cavalry brigades, or horse brigades as I call them. One with 2 dragoons and hussar, and the other 2 cuirassiers, which are sort of the best units in the game. Again, something you won't see in normal Field of Battle. I have divided them into heavy, light, medium cavalry. I give a bonus, so even if they were the same values in combat, if you're heavy cavalry, you get a bonus. In Field of Battle, everything goes up or down 1 dice type, from a dice 4 up to a dice 12. So you can see here the combat dice for a standard Prussian Infantry Regiment is combat dice 10 and defense dice 6, which is used against shooting. Basically, again, if they were attacked by a higher level unit, they would be 1 dice worse off. That's basically it. This means a number of units, and MPs is a number of army morale points. Now again, in standard Field of Battle there would be 17 units. What happens is if I have a crack unit, I count as double, so that brings it up. They have basically 6 crack units, giving them an extra 6 points. You throw a dice and that tells you how many your army has, so if you roll quite low you can be less than your standard army, which means you're a bit upset on the day, tired out, whatever. So that's the standard Prussians. The Russians are something similar. I should have said the Prussians have a dice 12 commander, Frederick, 3 dice 10, which is sort of average or good commanders, and a dice 12 commander is very good. The Russians, however, only have an average deck, a dice 10 CNC Firmware, but again they've got 2 infantry brigades and 2 horse brigades, although their cavalry's not really on a par with the Prussians. However, their infantry are quite good. Whilst they're only 8 in combat, they're 8 defence. We make them sort of stoic where they don't shoot as well, but they fight quite well because they would get a benefit of being a higher quality or a higher class in defence than the Prussians. So it sort of evens things up, and it's to give the stoicism for the Russians. Again, as per normal Field of Battle, they have 20 units, which a dice roll would give them 24, but they have 3 crack units that give them 23, and they've got an army starting morale point of 28, which, as you see as you go along, depletes, and that's how the army loses. Again, they've basically got a grenadier each, 5 infantry, and a battery, and then there's 2 cavalry brigades, although their dragoons and their cuirassiers aren't up to the Russian scratch. But again, that would illustrate, in our system, the dragoons are exactly the same as a cuirassier, combat 10, defense 6. However, if medium cavalry were fighting heavy cavalry, the heavy cavalry would get an advantage. You either get the benefit of being a better unit class or heavier cavalry, not both. Okay, so we'll start getting into the game, doing some dice rolls and take it from there. Okay, let's start off on our first turn of Field of Battle. So what happens is you have an army commander's dice, which in this case is a dice 12 for the Prussians and a dice 10 for the Russians. So roll those together we have 5 and 1. So that means that the Prussians can have a difference of 4 cards, which they can use in their hand, as can the Russians, or the Prussians, sorry. However, the Prussians, having won the initiative with a 5v1, can then decide whether they want to go first or second. Being Prussians, I think we'll go second. Oh, by the way, the little curtain rings that are shown here on some of the units, if you can indicate those, I put those on units simply to show that they still retain first fire. So once they've had their first fire bonus, units in the game get a bonus for shooting with loaded muskets, dry powder, etc. Once that's taken, it's going off and then back down to standard. So as we'll see, the Prussians are going to turn their first card, which is leadership. So you can see the cards that come with the game are basically on a sheet. You cut them out. These are ones that I bought over the web from Brent Oman, the author of the rules. Very nice they are too. They were originally for the original set, but they worked perfectly well for the second set. So as you can see, this one here, it's telling you that it costs 1 initiative point, which is one of those pips. It's a leadership card, and that's what you can do in the leadership. So again, it's a very mechanically easy game to play, to learn, because you simply do what's on the card each time. So here, it allows leaders to move. You can rally units, that's when they've taken hits. You can see there, it tells you what you do. Not really much you can do with that at this stage, so we'll put that down. We'll pick our next card. Now, this is a blank card. What this is in this game, again, a house rule I have for the Prussians is that to give them either superior mobility for their better drill, or give them an extra move card in the deck, or if you want to simulate that they supposedly had, and I say supposedly, a better rate of fire, more accurate shooting, you give them an extra firepower card in the deck. Now today I've decided with the extra firepower card deck for infantry firepower, so that basically is an infantry firepower card. But as you can see, nothing's within range of each other. So again, another card as such. Next card then is another leadership, so again. And lastly we have Tactical Advantage. Now this again is a nice card. Costs you the 1 pip, but you hold on to it and it can be used to modify dice rolls throughout the game. Morale, shooting, combat, defense, rallies, everything except the army morale card. So when the army runs out of morale, they have to test when the army morale cards come up to see if they stay in the battle. Again, very simple. So that's the Prussian cards going through. Nothing particularly that we could do. I seem to take an extra card out there. So now we'll go and do the Russian 4 cards. Okay, so here we have Russia's 4 cards, and their first one out is indeed the army morale card I was just talking about. Now you can see in the top right there it says it's you've got a little 0 or 1. That simply means it's normally 0 if you have no routing or eliminated units in your army so far in the game. So they basically doesn't count anything against their pip total. If you have a routing or eliminated unit, then it costs you the standard 1 pip. Again, any officer who's been at risk tells you, again, for the purposes of the game, it says dice 12 eliminated, and you'll be eliminated on a 1. We use dice 20 because we found that the dice 12 amazingly result in an awful lot of dead officers. Okay, so that's essentially a null card, so the Russians will pick another one in from their deck. And again, we have leadership, similar to the Prussians, but not much they can do with that at this stage. So I go on to their next card, move. Now, again, it shows you it takes the 1 pip. Quite clearly says use leadership against a d6. The enemy or opposing player always rolls the opposing card, which again for multiplayer games we find is excellent because it keeps people involved in every phase of the game, whether it's your turn or your cards or not. And it simply shows it there. You roll your leadership dice, which is the individual leader quality, and depending by what you beat or don't beat the enemy by, that gives you a number of maneuver segments. Okay. Again, in Field of Battle, a very clever thing is if you win even, you have more opportunities to do things than if you have an odd winning score, which you'll see throughout the battle. Again, what that means, if you win by rolling even, you can go into immediate melee, which allows you to move straight into contact and fight, or allows you to do a maneuver. Generally in Field of Battle, things go straight ahead or oblique slightly, but they can't change facing or formation. However, if you won an even, you could use one of your potentially more than 1 move segment to do a maneuver. Again, we'll see that better once we get going. So the Russians are going to use this card, so we'll leave that on top and show you how that works. Okay, so under the move card, basically every unit on your side can move, or every brigade can attempt to move. So for what we're going to do is, here we have a Russian commander. Here you see him, Kanets, in charge of this infantry brigade, and I have marked him as a leader 10. So basically what he does, as per the thingy card, he picks a dice 10. I'll use red for the Russians, and it's always against an enemy dice 6. So we'll roll those, and he rolls an even 6 against an even 4. So what that tells us, referring back to the card, is because he's, let me get that in focus for you, because he's 1 by 2, he only gets one movement segment, but he could, if he was close enough, go into melee, or he could do a formation change. Now that applies to everybody in his brigade. So what I'll do is I'll move these units now. Okay, so we're going to move this brigade now. In my system I use base widths simply because I have nice sticks, etc. to move them. Okay, so standard inches for 28mm, half it or 2/3 for 15s, call it centimetres, whatever. Mine is essentially doubling the standard ranges. I call them centimetres, but then dividing by 4 to give me the base widths. It's just a quirk, but it just works. It means I can use one set of measuring sticks for all periods. So in this period, foot, artillery and infantry move 4 base widths, or if you like 8 inches per segment. We again have a slight house rule. If you're in line, you only go 3. So for instance, I would move these guys 3 base widths, or whatever you want to call it, 12 centimetres. Now, again, when they're moving, they can oblique, which is up to 2 base widths per side. Okay, 2 base widths side and then forward, or they could simply go to the side too, but we'll just move them all up. Okay, again, I like to keep them nicely lined simply because in period I think that's pretty much what they did. Artillery will go 3 as well. Now, artillery and march columns, such as these grenadiers, even if they're all odd or they only get 1 march segment, they can always at the end of their move unlimber or change formation. It's a free thing you get at the start of the game when you're in columns, or artillery get it throughout the game when they're limbered. Again, a house rule we have in 7 Years' War is once artillery's unlimbered in this period, because we still have them with civilian drivers, essentially, they don't relimber throughout the course of the battle. We allow them to pivot 45 degrees before they fire and things like that, but essentially, once you deploy them, that's them. Okay, so move the rest of this brigade up, incline them slightly, move their commander with them. Now the march column can go slightly faster, it can go to 4 segments, so it could go slightly further. Again, I could, if I wished, decide to deploy them there, but we're not going to do that. Okay, so that's the first brigade move, so we simply do the same for the rest of the brigade, so I'll do those. Okay, I'm going to move the second brigade, which, just to show you, in a little pre-battle phase, it got to deploy basically 1 area forward. Everybody else was sort of within 8 to 10 inches of the rear, including the Prussians, but 1 Russian command was allowed to deploy up to 16 inches forward, so that's what they've done to try and take that line of hill, just in case the Prussians would have got the jump on them. So again, this is a dice 10 commander, so he's going to roll against the dice 6 of the Prussians, and this time it's a 2 for the Russians and a 1 for the Prussians, or all the way around, sorry, 2 for the Russians and 1 for the Prussians. So again, they get 1 move segment. If you roll a 1, you don't get any moves. That's the only time it happens. If you were to lose your roll and get, say you rolled 2 and they rolled 3, you would still get 1 move segment. Okay, so again, the Russians here are going to possibly move a little bit, not a lot they want to do, maybe just forward a bit onto the hill, make sure we have command of it. There's a lot of Prussian cavalry out there. These boys in support, again, I simply have it that if you're within 1 base width of a flank or 2 base widths of the rear, you count as support, which helps you only in melee. Gives you an up 1 on your dice. It also, instead of being forced back, you might go out of command, which is basically in field of battles akin to disorder in most other rule sets. Okay, so that's them done, quite minor. Okay, here we are then, the Russian cavalry wing. We have a dice 10 leader here, and a dice 8 leader here, not so good. He'll have problems rallying stuff. The 10s are okay. So we're going to try the 10. So he rolls against a dice 6. He rolls a 3 and a 1. Okay, so that gives him +2, which again is only one move segment. But they can't do anything what we call fancy, as in you can't change facing, all those sorts of things. You can't charge in because he rolled odd even though he won. But cavalry being cavalry, they're quite fast, so they can do a 6-inch move. Again, sometimes we would give light cavalry, because ours maybe an extra couple of moves, but base widths. But in this case, I'm just going to keep them all the same. So they're all going to move up. He will pull the slide slightly, I think, just a wee bit of echelon. Okay, so that then leaves the last Russian cavalry, and they're rolling a dice 8 leader against dice 6, and that's a 5-3. So again, they win, get one move segment, but can't do anything fancy. So essentially, they're just going to move up alongside their compatriots, waiting for the Prussians. This is 2 units of dragoons. They do have a decent, you can see it there, I have them marked C10D8, that's probably the best, in fact it is the best Russian horse unit. That's their horse grenadiers. So combat wise they're not any better than the rest of them, they're all 10s. But again, if they were fighting something with a D6, or if they were fighting light cavalry, since they're medium, they would get an up 1. Okay, so that's that movement card done for the Russians. Okay, so again I'll be back to turning the next card and seeing what it is, so we'll go and do that. Okay, so the next card for the Russians is what's called a lull card, and that's a good time to explain the differences in the deck. The Prussians have what's called an exceptional deck. So basically everybody has 27 cards, you all have the same number of melee, move, army morale, which is 3, 3 infantry firepower, 3 artillery, 3 leadership. And then what the decks do are, there's a number of lull cards that you get, can change things. So for instance, the Russians have an average deck, which means there's 4 lull cards in it, whereas the exceptional Prussian only has 1. So that's a difference of 3 cards. So essentially what the Prussians have got is, they've got 1 extra leadership card, they have 1 extra move, 1 command group, I think they have 1 extra maneuver, I can't remember what the other one is, something like that. But a lull card still costs you the 1 pip. What happens is you both roll your leadership dice against each other, and whoever wins the lull card. So if we go back to the Prussians having dice 12 and the Russians a dice 10 for their leadership, we roll 9 each. Okay, so that means it doesn't take effect. Had the Prussians won, they would get to take a card from their deck for nothing. It's like an interrupting card. You can get sometimes where it's another lull card, but in this case the Ivans were lucky enough that nothing happened. So again, that's a card in the deck, and then their last card is infantry firepower. Again, it simply tells you remove fire markers. In the field of battle in the PK system, once you fire, your class is unloaded. Instead of firing in separate phases, you know, like a close combat phase, close fire phase, defensive fire thing, you simply fire at any time during the game in any player's turn if you're loaded. The way we usually mark it is with a piece of smoke to show that they're unloaded, and you need one of these to remove them. Okay, so quite intricate. Why I like it, because it builds up a nice narrative. You're never sure when things are going to do things. You're caught with, do I hold fire, do I use my fire, do I call my first fire? All good decisions. So that's basically the end of that first phase. It's not actually a turn. Turn doesn't end in field of battle till one or both players run out of their deck or both roll evens on their initiative rolls. But that was 2 card plays, so we'll stop that and do another initiative roll and see what the cards bring up and continue on. Okay, in this case the dice roll was 8-1 in favour of the Russians, so that's 7 cards both players will get to use in the turn potentially. The Russians have decided that they let the Prussians go first to see if they can find out what they're going to do as such. So the first Prussian card we have is infantry firepower. Again, things are too far apart, but if you had any unloaded units, you would simply load them again and that'll be them ready to fire. So that's that one. Their next card is a maneuver card. Quite simply tells you can change face and change formation. So the likes of these units here that are all in column, they could if they wanted to change into line. In 7 Years' War I just allowed march column and line, don't allow anything else like attack columns and stuff. It doesn't seem 7 Years' War to me, not includes for the cavalry. I messed about with things like wave attacks and all these sorts of things, but it's not worth the hassle and it doesn't really add anything to the game. want to keep lines at 7 Years' War, so like these, this is the formation that they fight in. You don't really have attack columns as in Napoleonics, you don't have, but you do have march columns, so if they wanted to deploy on that card they could, or maybe this unit would want to change its facing, like that, which you can't normally do unless you roll evens and get more than one move segment or whatever, so maybe they would want to do that, but not in this case, but that's what that card covers. So next card is infantry firepower again, not going to use that. Artillery firepower. Now, again, it's simply similar to the infantry, except it applies to artillery, and it's the same thing, costs you pip, and it's remove fire markers. Now, what you can do, what we generally do, that means just essentially get a free shot. If you've artillery, say this artillery here was unlimbered, it could shoot and reload. It could shoot a second time, but then it'll be unloaded, so that's the way it works. Again, very, very simple. Do the next card, infantry firepower again. Next one, melee. Again, that's a new card. Tells you on it, resolve melee, combat dice v combat dice. If you're within half a move of the enemy, you can move into contact and fight straight away. Again, if you roll even, the winner can follow up and doesn't take pursuit. If you roll odds, you always take one hit in pursuit. You don't physically move, but you just take a temporary hit, although it doesn't come off your army morale. In this period, again, we don't allow anybody other than cavalry to use an immediate melee. On move cards, they can only do it on a melee card, or if they're aggressive infantry, which would be early war Prussians when Frederick had his in with the bayonet lads, maybe Highlanders, something like that, you know. None of those on today, but that's again another sort of house rule we would sometimes use. So that's the melee card, nothing to use with it here. And lastly, they have another leadership card. Again, nothing particularly they can do here or want to do, so that's the end of the Prussian card. So whilst that seems not a lot happening, what you've got to understand is these things go through and it comes very quick. Plus, if you were a card counter, suppose you would know, oh, they've lost to their artillery firepower card, but you'll see yourself, once things come to combat, it works quite well. So we'll go on to the Russian 7. Okay, what I'm going to illustrate here is that Prussian guns are moving up the road, limbered. They have 3 move segments from the side to go there and are about to unlimber. However, what we're going to do is we're going to fire these Russian guns to show you how that works. So first thing is pop a bit of smoke in front of them to say it's fired. Looking at their stat, they're 10-6 artillery, and measure the range. Should note that all firing in field of battle is done from the centre of the unit at up to 45 degrees either side. As I said earlier, I think we allowed guns in this period to pivot up to 45 degrees before they shoot anyway, simply because they don't allow them to redeploy once they're out. So these guns are going to fire. It's at just under 8 base widths. So looking at our stats here, Russians are on a basic 10. As you can see, up to 9 to 4 base widths, there's no change, so they'll stay on the 10. In standard field of battle, Brent has up 2 for not to 4 inches, and then from 4 to 8 he has up 1. We've changed it to just 1 base width, feeling that whilst this might be canister, this is the real canister. Found at 4, it was too powerful, but it works fine. So it's basically no change. The target formation is limbered, so again there's no change, so they stay on a 10, and the Prussians will be on 6. So we'll see how that goes. Just position this back. So it's a 10 against a 6. We'll just roll it here. Okay, so there we have. The roll is a 5 to the Russians and a 3 to the Prussians. So what that means is the Prussians, because they're beaten by 3, take 1 UI hit. Okay, so again we'll just move this. Sorry about the turtle vision. So what happens is I use a little dice in field of battle. So they will take 1 hit. Okay, that then comes off their army morale. Now, as I explained earlier in the army morale, each army has a set of, you could use chips, poker chips, dice, coins, anything you want. I simply use little mini playing cards that I have some decks of. So the Prussians in this game have 23 army morale points. So what happens is they simply lose 1. Our convention is we put it to the bottom of the deck, so eventually what happens is you'll be faced with cards, you'll know your army's out of morale, things are going down the swanny. Okay, so that's what happens there. They could have used their tactical advantage card to make their defense up 1, but they chose not to, which is fine. Again, the Russians could have used one of theirs, but didn't. So, however, if the Russians had rolled, say, a 6-2, that would have simply meant against an infantry or cavalry unit, the cavalry would be forced back that number of inches or halved in the number of base widths in my system, out of command. Being artillery, they would simply go out of command, they don't get forced back. But here nothing happened to them, so they can complete their move of deploying. Okay, showing the 1 hit. Now, they could fire back, or they could potentially pivot to fire at the entry into the hill. And for the purposes of the video, I think that's what we'll do. Although they probably have a 45 degree even without pivoting, we'll just make it obvious. So, they're going to fire. So again, we place a little chit on there. So I get some of the balances on. There. They place a little chit on their stand to say they fired. They're going to fire at the Russians up the hill. It's up the 8 space widths. They play their tactical advantage card, which you can see modify any dice roll up 1. So that'll give them a +1. So looking at the combat charts, as you can see, it's up the 8 base widths, so there's no change. We're against infantry, no losses, the circumstances, there's nothing. They play tactical advantage, so it takes them up from a dice 10 basic to a dice 12. Artillery range, as I say, is no change. Obviously they're limbered, but the target formation is aligned, so there's no change. If we're firing against a march column, it'd be up 1. If we're against scouts line or unlimbered artillery, you're down 1. So they're basically on their basic 10, which is their stat. You can see they're adding 1 for their tactical advantage cards, gives them a dice 12 basic. The Russians are dice 8, so they're being stoic, they're quite good. They could play their tactical advantage, give themselves a dice 10. What we'll do is we'll play dice 12 against dice 8 and see how it works out. So, rolling our dice, it's 7 each, so nothing. Basically, that's the roll, 7 each, so it's a shot. Oh, what I actually done wrong was there, it should have been, we'll keep the Russians 7, but that should be a dice 10, because they're down 1 for having the hit. You take 1 off for each UI loss. So, even worse for the Prussians, they rolled a 5, so definitely would have lost. So that's a standard shooting, pretty much the same throughout the game for everybody, but as you can see now, on the Prussian side of things, they have 2 artillery units unloaded. The Russians have 1. Okay, so we'll end that shooting and come back with something else in a while. Okay, rolled for new initiative and it scored 7-4 in Prussia's favour. So what they're going to do, they're going to take their 3 initiative, as in their 3 cards, and they're going to do them first. And I hope we'll be getting an artillery reload. And lo and behold, first card out is remove fire marker. So it costs them their pip, but it does allow them then to restore. Just move this. What it does is it allows them to restore their or reload their guns. Now, again, a convention we have is when you reload, you simply put the thing to the back until you decide what you're doing with the card. Because if we were to fire that gun again, it would be unloaded. Okay, so what we're going to do, this one's going to stay reloaded, but these chaps here are actually going to fire again. That's the enemy's far away. So I think they'll have another pop. They'll have a pop at this column. So again, we're on a bit further this time, so it's 8, 10, 12 base widths. They're firing at. They're firing a basic 10. Okay, but if we have a look at our shooting charts, so For the circumstance, they're not firing, they're not pill, there's no first fire, they're not using a tactical advantage this time, they've no losses. For the artillery, range is up to 12, so they'll be down 1, so they're down to dice and 8. Okay. However, the target's in a column this time, so they're back up to a dice 10. The Russians, being grenadiers, I know, are dice 8, so we'll simply roll a dice 10 against a dice 8 and see what happens. So here we'll have that. And just for a wee change, it's evens. I like dice rolls, just super smashy and lovely. So, no effect. But again, even the artillery firepower, they reloaded. Could have took that away instead loaded, but instead they decided to fire, so that leaves them unloaded again. So go for the next Prussian card, which is move 1 command group. And that's simply what it says. Command group being in this case a brigade, a division, whatever it is, a wing. So that allows the Prussians to move, pick one brigade that they have on their side and move it as if it was a normal move card, which is rolling against the enemy d6 and rolling your own brigade commander's dice. So they're going to decide which one of those to do and use that card. Okay, the Prussians are going to decide they're going to try and move Marshall's central group, so I want to get through that wood and up towards that hill before the Russians do. So they're rolling their dice 10 against their dice 6. And they roll a 9 against a 5. So as you can see from the card, if you can see it there, they win by 4, so they get 2 move segments, but because they're rolled even, they'll not get to do any manoeuvres like change of facing, nor could they go straight in the melee if they were allowed to. Okay, so that's a simple enough one. So that uses that card, and they'll conduct their move of 2 segments. So at 2 half segments, that will get them a move of 3 through the wood. What happens in the class 2 terrain, when you get to the edge of it, you have to stop again. So you basically always spend a segment or a move to get into or out of. Actually, I think I'm probably wrong with class 2 that you move at full speed through it. It's only class 3, I think you actually move at half. So what they do is they'll go up the edge and that'll stop them. They'll have to spend a segment to get out of the trees the next time. Okay, these guys up behind them. Keep our boy behind. But just while I'm doing this, I should say that the commanders, basically, their command range is based on their dice. In the standard game, there's 1, and 1's 2. In their standard game rules, they would have twice their dice in command range, so a dice 10 commander with 20 inches. In mine, I just keep it as base widths, 10 base widths, rather than doubling it in half and not less, so simple enough. As you can see, the guns don't move, even though they're part of that brigade, because they're now deployed. All they can do is manoeuvre, okay, or die, essentially. So that's the move 1 command card. The last Prussian card is army morale. Now again, there's nothing eliminated, nothing routing, they haven't lost anything, so it doesn't cost anything. However, what has happened is in that move, that last move, the Prussians were fired and took a hit. So what I normally do is mark the commander with a little red thing to show he's in danger. So on this case, the card tells you that he has to take an officer survival test because somebody in his command took a hit. Now again, standard, it's a dice 12. We found that too deadly, so we use a dice 20. So he basically only dies on a 1. So we roll, he rolls an 18, so he's fine. Okay, just take a little danger chit off, and that's him done. So that's the army morale card, that's how that works. Okay, but it didn't cost us anything, so they get an extra card because of no routing or eliminated units. So, and that one being, lo and behold, another artillery firepower card. So again, the artillery has a choice to reload, fire, whatever. So first thing we'll do is reload this chap. Okay, the guy on the road could fire and then reload on that card, which means he wouldn't be marked. He would essentially fire, reload on the card, be reloaded. So we'll maybe do that since it's essentially a free shot. So we're back to him again. Again, he'd fire the chops up the hill. So he's on a 10, range was unchanged. He is, however, down 1, so he's down an 8, albeit an 8 against an 8. So let's go with that. Okay. And we have a 4-2. Alright, that's an interesting one. Not enough to give a hit on the Russians, okay, because they didn't score 3, but it is an even roll and more than, so what happens is the Russians will fall back 2 inches, or in my case 1 base width, or up to meet the enemy, and they go out of command or disorder, whatever you wish to call it. It's called out of command in the game, but disorder, out of command, whatever, unhinged, whatever. So again, the Prussians could fire another bladder if they wanted, but they would be unloaded, so they're happy enough to do that. Now, their other guns, which have just reloaded, could again have a poke at the column, okay, which they're thinking, we'll leave ourselves unloaded, but you know what, we're not going to get a better, potentially not going to get a better target than a column, so they'll have a go, so that will leave them unloaded. Remember, it was 12 base widths, so they're on a 10, down 1 for the range is an 8, but up 1 for the column is back up to a 10. The Russians are an 8, but they're going to use their tactical advantage and make themselves 10, so it's a 10 each. So let's get our dice, roll, and this time it's 8 to the Russians and 6 to the Prussians, so no change there. Doesn't take any hit. All it does do is, because they use their tactical advantage, uses up their tactical advantage card, but nothing else occurs. So that was the Prussians, 3 cards, and that'll be over to the Russians. So we'll do okay, so here we are with the Prussian 3 cards from their initiative, and their first one up is artillery firepower. So again, just like the Prussians, they have a chance to, well, they may have 1 deployed unit at the moment anyway, which is the guys in the road. They could, well, the first thing they'll do is reload. They could fire, but they'll decide not, so they're just going to reload and stay loaded. So on to their next card, which is infantry firepower. Again, it's just similar to the any infantry that's fired can reload or shoot and reload, but there's nothing close enough, so it doesn't count. And their last card in this again is army morale. Now again, they just took a hit or were fired on, so the Russian commander for that central command will have to roll a dice 20, which he does. He rolls a 15, so he's okay. Again, by convention, I would normally mark them with a hit because it's hard to remember actually in heat of battle who's done what with the way the game works. But again, this costs nothing because there's no routed or eliminated units, so they'll get a free card. And it's another artillery firepower. So this time they're going to have a shot because they're loaded. So they will. Let's just move it over. These boys will essentially fire, but then they can reload on the thingy card, so they could fire again potentially, so possibly 2 shots. But what we'll do is we'll fire them to show you how it works, and we're going to fire at the chaps in the wood, partly in the wood. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 5 base widths. So they're on a 10. The Prussians are 6 defense. Okay. So there's no change for range. They're in line, no change. The target cover, class 2 would take them down 1. Isn't it? I would say most of the front lines outside, so for my purposes I wouldn't count them, but you could. It depends how where you debate it as. All in, all out, I'd put have to at least more than 50% in anything to count as covered by it. So we'll not give them the benefit of cover. So it's going to be a 10 against a 6. So we'll get our dice 10 Russian, wherever it is, and our dice 6 defenders. Okay, so we roll for them, and it's a 3-5, so nothing. So again, on the artillery firepower card, remember, we could reload, which we'll do. Could fire again, but that would potentially leave us exposed to Prussian infantry charge, so we'll simply reload. And that ends the Prussian initiative. So it's back to another initiative, which I'll do, and we'll come back to that again. Okay, rolled for initiative, and it worked out at 10-3 to the Russians, so that's 7 cards they had to play potentially, and they decided to go first. So Again, first card, maneuver, allows you to change formation, so get on limber or do things like that. So having sustained 2 whacks and been lucky enough, these boys are going to deploy. Again, you can be as strict or as hard as you only want to deploy only either side, whatever. Quite free and easy with it. Okay, so they're going to deploy. Anybody else wants to deploy? Not at present. Everybody's happy enough. Okay, so the next card is infantry firepower. Again, nothing's close enough to have an effect. The next one is our move card. So this we're back to rolling the individual brigade leaders against the enemy dice 6 to see how many moves we get. So I'll do that for this nearest brigade first of all. So he's Kapnisk and he's a dice 10, so he rolls a dice 10. It's always against the dice 6, so there he rolls, and he rolls an 8 against the 3. Okay, so 8 against the 3 is a difference of 5, which gives him 2 move segments, as we can see here. Okay, but it does allow him to do certain things, what we call fancy stuff, as in maneuver, change facing, all those sorts of things, because he's rolled even. So we'll just do his moves. So even though these grenadiers have just deployed off the maneuver card, they can now move on this move card, and they can move up to 2 segments. So what they're going to do is they're going to go forward and shuffle to the side obliquely, 3, and these boys are going to come up beside them, staying within 1 base width to give them some support. Again, if the Prussian guns had been, now what they might actually go further forward because they can actually take possession of the hill as such. Give the Prussians something to think about. If the Prussian guns had been loaded, they could have shot at this stage if they wanted. Not always essential. Let's simply go to there. I think what we'll do is we'll move our artillery, if you can see it here. Let me just move it over slightly. Again, remember they have 2 moves, but on artillery, limbered artillery or march column can always deprive. So they'll come to the top of the hill and they'll simply unlimber. Okay, these boys will echelon behind them, and we'll bring these chaps up in for 2 moves. 8 base widths is, or 6 base widths is fairly substantial. Now, do the Russians want to fire? Answer is, me being me, just move this over, them being Russians, yeah we do. So again we mark them as fired, and we're going to simply fire into the chaps in front here again that are, well, either slightly exposed or more than half, so we'll fire on these chaps this time. Okay, so the Russians have decided to fire. They're at 5 base widths range, which is still just no change. Okay, so they're on their basic 10. They're firing a line, nothing, so nobody's any tactical advantage cards, anything to fire like that. So it's a basic 10 against a 6. So roll the dice, and here we have a 9 against a 2. Okay, so pretty good shot from the Russians. They beat them by 7. Okay, so that's going to be 2 UI hits on the parole Prussians, so they take 2 hits. Okay. Had that have been, we'll just refer to it. You can see there at the top, they lose 1 UI and 1 amp per hit, so they've taken 2 hits. They'll also have to lose 2 of their cards from a little deck over in the box. Sorry, I got slightly interrupted there. So they're on a 9-2, which gives the Prussians 2 hits, which means they'll lose 2 cards from their army morale, which I'll just go and do now before I forget. So they lose another 2 cards, which again by convention we'll just put underneath. Okay, then back to here. If I show you on the, now they lost 1. If it had been an even roll, they would have fallen back, and in fact if it had been an even roll and you'd lost 2 UI, the Prussians would have routed. So it's quite subtle the way I feel that works. Odds and evens is very, if that was say an 8-2, it would have been the same effect in hits, same effect in amps, but they would also routed away 4 base widths essentially, okay, requiring rallied. But they do have 2 hits, so that's 2 off their basically anything they want to do essentially. So So that's that Russian card. That move card for that command, should I say. We do have the other brigades to do, so what I do is I'll go and do them, and we'll come back to the video.